thanks, Guy, for the invitation to speak to everyone today about the value and importance of the Corvus Centre. My comments today are really going to be focused on why I think an organization like the Corvus Centre is important, and then also the value that I think that it brings to the existing landscape of conservation organizations that already exist here in Alberta. So Guy mentioned, my background. For those who don't know me, I've actually worked as an environmental consultant here in Alberta for over 20 years. So I have a lot of experience in the trenches, I guess, as a practitioner. And as an environmental consultant, I spend a lot of my time working and managing wetlands, both in terms of sort of landscape planning and the management, but also on the restoration end of things. And so in my work with wetlands and other natural systems, I interact with environmental law and policy on a daily basis. And I also interact with the people and the organizations who either regulate those natural environments or are being regulated by those laws and policies. And as someone who regularly interacts with environmental law and policy, I can tell you that there's a pretty common perception out there that is sort of demonstrated here on this slide, that there's a simple and straightforward relationship between our scientific understanding of the environment and environmental outcomes. And that's to say that a lot of people think that if we want better outcomes, we just need better or more scientific data and information. And if you flip to the next slide, Guy, I think that, that's the perception of how science and policy interacts. But in reality, the development and the implementation of environmental law and policy is really, really complicated, and there's an enormous amount of complexity. And this diagram that I'm showing is from a paper that I recently published about the science policy practice process. And this is specifically in relation to wetland restoration here in Alberta. And this is by no means the authoritative source for defining what this process looks like. But what it does, I think, is really tries to capture and illustrate the actual complexity of how knowledge is mobilized and used by the people who interact with and use environmental law and policy in these three realms. So policy, practice, and also science. And, I think a lot of the comments that have happened prior today have really touched on this idea that policy and law is really complicated. And that's mostly because it includes people and it also includes relationships. And just because we have environmental policy and law doesn't mean that we actually get the outcomes that we're looking for. And so that's why having an organization like the Corvus Centre, in my opinion, is really essential and really, really important. And I really feel strongly that in order to have better conservation outcomes, which is something that we all are striving for, we actually need people and organizations that are committed to working as what I call boundary spanners. So folks who are able to work in and translate between these three realms, science, policy, and practice. Because working as a boundary spanner isn't something that you can dabble in. It takes a huge amount of dedication, it takes expertise, and it takes resources. And it's actually something that I think increasingly we're really, as a society, starting to see the value of folks and organizations who act as boundary spanners, because these are essential roles where in our society and the way we're organized, we have specialists in each of these realms, but in a lot of cases, we have a lot of difficulty communicating between those realms and sort of looking at the larger landscape and integrating knowledge and information from each of those realms and using it to put into practice and to actually achieve the outcomes that we're interested in. So I think that having an organization that's wholly committed to working in this space is really important, to not only how we implement, but also to how we create new environmental laws and policies within different jurisdictions. So I really feel that the Corvus Centre fills a really important gap here in Alberta. And I really look forward to seeing what the center does and also hopefully collaborating with them in the future. So thanks, Guy.